What's going on, golf addicts? It is TJ After Dark, presented by DraftKings. I am David Barnett. I got Pat Perry. We are the Tour Junkies. We just finished recording our very own podcast. Hey, while you're here, give us a thumbs up. Give us a like. Subscribe to the DraftKings channel if you've not already. Tons of great content. We are the least of these in terms of great content on DraftKings. But, you know, we're here to talk golf, and we talk golf every single week. Talking the PGA Tour, had a great Masters week. Just this past week, it was fantastic. Can't wait. The Masters is coming back in like 5 months in our hometown of Augusta. Looking forward to it, but we got to move on. Long shot season, I think, is back. We're going to see a much weaker field than the Masters this week for the RSM Classic, but a pretty strong field for the RSM in and of itself. And I think, you know, this tournament has a history of long shots doing well. Pat, let's get into this. I want to talk about the golf courses because we have 2 courses this week, 2 golf courses. I want to talk about those, and I want to talk about a couple of names that we just went through on our own podcast that we didn't take a whole lot of time, but we disagree on. And then we're going to get into our thoughts and first look at some of the options on DK Sportsbook if you're able to bet on the RSM Classic. So, Pat, talk to me about the golf course. What you got at lovely Sea Island in Georgia?
Yes. So this is, Sea Island Golf Club. We got 2 golf courses this week, which we typically only see a few times a year. You've got the Seaside course, and then you've also got the Plantation course. They will play the Seaside course 3 times as long as they make the cut, and they'll play the Plantation course at least once, whether it's going to be on Thursday or Friday. Like you mentioned, it's actually not that bad of a field this week, and you got 156 players, so the most we've seen in a while. When you go to the Seaside course, it is a par 70 playing just over 7,000 yards, so not very long. But it's it's kind of a link style course. It's a coastal course, so it's definitely affected by the winds, which we're right now, if you're looking at the weather forecast, it looks like the winds are going to be pretty high.
Yeah.
Heading into Thursday and Friday. This is a Fazio design. It is Bermuda grass tee to green. I think that is something that is definitely important. It's especially on these greens. They get very grainy Bermuda here. I mean, it is just like old school Bermuda grass. Now, it does roll pretty quick, but these greens they're pretty big. The fairways are pretty big. So all that, they're not hard to hit fairways, not hard to hit greens, but you have to putt your ball like crazy this week. I think that's something that's important. The Plantation course is definitely going to be the one that they can score more on. It is a par 72, just over 7,000 yards. It's a Davis Love design. It's got 4 par 5s here that are all relatively easy. 3 are definitely reachable in 2. So I think that's important. It's kind of a harbor town-like course. It's inland. It's got tree-lined fairways, so not as open to the winds and things like that. So when you get on Plantation, that's where you got to score, and that's what we've seen over the last few years since they've had the 2-course rotation here. Definitely seeing a ton of scoring when you look at the past champions. I mean, it's 19 unders winning, 20 unders winning. So I think that's something that we're going to look at for sure. As far as stats for me, I'm going to look at form. I'm going to look at some course history. Definitely putting long-term on Bermuda. I think that's important. And strokes gained approach will also be another one that I'm looking at as well. So there you go. That is the quick rundown for the RSM Classic.
You mentioned the winning scores. Definitely, has favored a little bit of an easier course over the years. But with the wind looking like it is right now, as of our recording this, which is late Monday night, I do think the scores could be a little higher. So just keep an eye on that. I think that's going to be something to take note of. Wind is the ultimate defense here at Sea Island. So, and now you do have your Sea Island narrative that we get every single year. There's a ton of players that live here on Sea Island, play here out of Sea Island, are coached here out of Sea Island, practice out of Sea Island. So there's the Sea Island Mafia narrative that you're going to get. This is also a host course to the Jones Cup, which is an amateur event, as well as the SEC Championship is played here a lot of times. So, there are some names in here that have more experience than you may think, despite not having actual PGA Tour RSM Classic experience. But I'm with you, man. I mean, wide fairways, big greens, wind is the defense. That's why it's built that way. I want guys who are going to, be able to hit fairways, because if it is windy, you're going to have to control your ball flight, which is easier to do from the fairway. Primarily, you're looking at strokes gained approach, greens and regulation, and experience and familiarity and success on this very grainy Bermuda surfaces, which you mentioned, not just putting off of it, but also chipping off of it. You and I both grew up here in the South. You live in Savannah now. There's a lot of grainy Bermuda around there. In fact, your home course, the Landings, which is a host of a Corn Ferry Tour event, very grainy stuff. Like, you got to be familiar with this stuff. If you're not, it can really puzzle a player in terms of how the ball is going to react. So, interesting stuff. Let's get into it. There's a name up top, Pat, that you mentioned. If we're looking on DraftKings, we're looking in the 9K and above range. There's a name up top that I just don't know that I want to pay up for. We didn't have a whole lot of time to spend talking about this player on the podcast, but Shane Lowry at $9,200 is a name that you threw out there on the Tour Junkies podcast as a tournament play that you like. And I don't know where Shane's ownership is going to fall. I feel like it's going to be probably in that 10% range. So not super chalky for sure. But he comes to the RSM Classic for the very first time. A lot of these guys a lot of the big names are playing here just because it's a short drive from Augusta. So coming here for the very first time, not having a lot of experience here on these golf courses at Seaside or Plantation, coming in decent form, a 25th place finish at the Masters, 11th at the Houston. I get all that. Historically in his PGA Tour career, not a great player or putter or chipper on Bermuda surfaces, which that is what worries me a little bit with Shane Lowry. It's like, yeah, it's the Bermuda surfaces, that familiarity, the lack of familiarity with this golf course. I just don't know that I want to pay the $9,200 for Shane Lowry.
Well, I don't think that I would have looked at him as much as I did once I saw before, when I was doing the research and I saw the wind out here. I think that, he's obviously shown by playing well in an Open Championship and from just, where he's from. I mean, they play in the wind a lot. They're used to that kind of weather. Yeah. He's a great ball striker. I mean, you look at his ball striking number, he's top 20 in the field in ball striking, top 20 in approach. He's 6th in the field in greens and regulation. So if you kind of take out the Bermuda stats, which aren't that great, and his scrambling isn't that great as well. Everything else though really checks out for Shane. And so, and the form is okay. And look, I think he's one of the stronger players in this field. I mean, again, yes, there's some great names and it's a stronger field than we typically see for the RSM, but it's still, there's some weak players. There's some weak ass players in here, and he's not one of them. I mean, it's the freaking Open champion, the defending Open champion. He's playing here for a reason. Yeah. I think he probably can, this is a different year. I don't think we typically would see a Shane Lowry at this event.
No, we wouldn't.
But we're seeing him now.
He's got one top 10 since the restart. I don't love that. From an upside play at 9,200, one top 10 since the restart bothers me a little bit. Now he's got a T11 in there, so if we're getting real nitpicky, T11 at the Houston. But that's it. It's been a lot of middling performances, some miscuts. I don't know that I see the upside.
Well, so you don't see the upside there, but then you're going to go with a guy at 9,700 in Harris English, who has missed the cut 3 out of the last. He actually has the history here that you can look at. He's missed the cut 3 out of the last 5 years. I mean, yes, his stats check out well on Bermuda grass and things like that. 61st in the field in ball striking. 89th in strokes gained approach. You talk about in wind, having to be able to, control your ball flight, all that kind of stuff. He doesn't check the box there. He's got problems there. Now, he does in Bermuda. Everything like that checks out. And look, he has played well recently, but a 9,700 Harris English does not appeal to me whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, but the difference is the form for Harris English, the Georgia boy, Sea Island connections that Harris English has. Now, granted, you mentioned his course history, but if you go back and look at his incoming form over the last 5 years coming into the RSM, his incoming form is light years worse than it is this year. He is playing like a different player. I mean, okay, I mentioned one top 10 for Shane Lowry since the restart. Well, Harris English has three, but he has eight top 20s, eight top 20s since the restart. I mean, he's been an absolute machine since June, including a 17th at the RBC Heritage, which is a similar course, a top 25 at the Wyndham, which is a similar course, a fourth at the U.S. Open, 10th just a couple of weeks ago at the CJ Cup. I mean, his ball striking, his iron play has been fantastic. Harris English is just a different player than the course history would tell you at the RSM Classic. So to me, I think the upside is easily a win for Harris English, and the floor is much higher than a Shane Lowry. So there you
go. Okay. Well, we'll see.
All right. Let's talk sportsbook picks, Pat. Because now you mentioned Harris English. I'll actually start there. If I'm looking at DraftKings Sportsbook at some names that I kind of like, I mean, Harris English is the first one that pops out to me. I'm not going to bet. Life's too short to bet the short names. Life's too short to bet the favorites. I'm not going to do it. Harris English at 28-1 is where I would start it for the reasons I just mentioned. Similarly, a guy like Russell Henley at 30-1 is another name that, if you look at his record at the RSM Classic, there's just a lot of years where he just has not come into this event playing as good as he is right now. He's probably been the best iron player, or at least top 3 iron player on the PGA Tour since the restart. That's including all the big names you want to throw out there. His iron play has been exceptional. And if the wind does kick up, that's what you need. You need solid ball striking, iron play, distance control, spin control. And that's what I think Russell Henley can give you at 30-1. I like that number. Staying in kind of the shorter to mid range, I'm going to stay with Kevin Kisner at 45-1. Kiz is a former champion here, very familiar with Sea Island, very familiar with both of these golf courses. And the form has been good. He's had some good finishes since the restart. I would throw out the missed cut at the Masters. The Masters has never been built for Kevin Kisner. It's too long. He doesn't love the length at Augusta. The shorter course, the very grainy Bermuda is an edge for Kisner here at Sea Island. So if I'm looking at kind of the short to intermediate range, those are a few names I like on the DK Sportsbook side.
Well, for me on the shorter range, and I don't mind the Kiz play, but right there next to him, I like Sebastian Munoz, a guy that we've seen play incredibly well. He played well last week at the Masters in his first time ever. I think at 45-1, that's still a good number. I know we talked about it on the show, and you can go back and listen. We had a little disagreement there, but I'm still a fan of that number. A little bit shorter, though, I will go I like Sungjae Im at 22-1. I mean, the guy is just so freaking solid. And I think he's just going to win a ton of the tour events, and he could certainly win this week. So I like him at 22-1. I think that number is just it could be a little bit shorter in this field. I could see it more in that 18-1 range. So I like him at 22-1. And then, going into that, over 50-1 to 100-1, area, I like some Sam Burns at 60-1.
Love Sam Burns. Yeah,
I think that's a great number for him. You mentioned the fact that, right here, one of my home courses, he won a web.com event, because it was web.com at the time, but Corn Ferry now, on a course very similar to this. I've played it several times. It's a course that has very grainy Bermuda. It's a coastal style course, about the same distance for these guys, and he won there. So I think Sam Burns is definitely a good play there at 60-1. Another guy I like, Taylor Gooch. He's at 70-1, somebody we've seen play very well recently with 2 top 5 finishes in his last 3 starts. So I like that as well. And then I just think Denny McCarthy at 85-1.
Love it.
Is a I mean, if you take out some of these big names like your Shane Lowrys, your Jason Days, your Webb Simpsons, your Sung Jae, whatever, he's up there. He's way shorter than this, if it's like a Bermuda Championship type event. And so if you're getting him at 85-1, I think that is an incredible number. So
yeah,
there you go.
I like McCarthy a lot. Couldn't agree more with you there. I'll go with a few long shots here, a few bombs. Austin Cook won here a couple years ago, playing well right now, comes in with a couple good finishes recently. Short hitter, finds a lot of fairways, a lot of greens. He's 100-1. HENRIK Norlander at 100-1, I really like. One of the best ball strikers on the PGA Tour. Windy conditions are premier for him. If this weren't looking like a windy tournament, then I would say his upside is limited a little bit. But I think the windy conditions actually help HENRIK. He's better than almost any player in this field in hitting the center of his irons every single time, controlling his distance, controlling his spin. Top 5 finish last year. He's got some really good record here, really good form here at Sea Island. He's very familiar with it, lives right here in Augusta, goes up to Sea Island frequently. And then I'm going to get longer here with some bombs and go James Hahn. Now, James Hahn has 3 top 10s in his last 4 events. Not really known to be a Bermuda guy, but he's actually not terrible. He's kind of middle of the pack in terms of putting on Bermuda. He's 150-1, and he has winning upside. This is a PGA Tour winner. He's contended in multiple PGA Tour events. If he can get there on Sunday, he's a guy that I feel like can close the door on a win at 150-1. And then I'm going to go with one more bomb, and that's Hank LeBiodà. He likes this course. He's familiar with this course. He has experience in that Jones Cup, that amateur event that we talked about. He's placed there and done well. And he's got a couple of top 35s, I think, here in his first 2 starts in the RSM Classic. Good ball striker, comfortable here. 300-1 for LeBiodà, and he's 10-1 in a top 20, which I also like. Handful of other top 20 bets if we're going to look there. Currently, as we record this right now, the matchups aren't out yet, but a couple top 20s I like. Davis Thompson is the #1 ranked amateur in the world. He's a University of Georgia boy, very familiar with Sea Island, played here last year, had a top 25, I believe. Thompson is a stud. 14-1 for a top 20. He's even better than he was last year. I know the field's stronger, but he has that kind of upside. And then I'm going to go with Nick Watney, seasoned PGA Tour veteran that actually practices out of here, gets coaching out of Sea Island. He's familiar with this golf course at 14-1. And then Michael Gligic is 10-1. Gligic's been playing very, very well. He's also a good value in DFS if you want to look his way. Been playing well and has the firepower to go low. He's not just some, par-making ho-hum guy. He's got firepower in him. So Gligic at 10-1 would be my last top 20 bet for the RSM Classic as of now. But, of course, more content and Tour Junkies content you can find on tourjunkies.com. Bunch of free – all of our written content is free every single week. You can check out our YouTube channel, our podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. And come, Tuesday, Wednesday night, things are starting to shake out in terms of ownership projections. Weather starting to take shape. I think there could be a first round leader edge depending on weather here. Tee time advantage. You have a lot of players in this field with 156 players, so first round leader edge is likely to be there. Plus the Plantation course, which historically plays a little easier. Those are all things to look out for, and you can find our thoughts on some of those things on tourjunkies.com. But I do think, Pat, this is long shot season continued. We've been talking about it. Tyler Duncan won this thing last year at 200-1. Charles Howell the year before that at like 80-1. Austin Cook at 90-1 the year before that. Like, you could see some bombs come up and win the RSM Classic, which gets me going, gets me happy in the middle. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's very exciting stuff. Not like what we saw last week at the Masters,
where DJ, the favorite, just runs away with it. Yeah. Nobody wants to see that. All right. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with us here at TJ After Dark, presented by DraftKings and DraftKings Sportsbook. May your screens be green. Give it a thumbs up. Give it a subscribe. See ya. Out.